How do you survive 33 days on a deserted island with no food, no water, and diabetes? 3 strangers were found on Kure Atoll, a remote Pacific island, alive against all odds. One of them, Sophia, survives only on rainwater, rats, and seashells. Most can't last 3 days in tropical heat without water, but they last over 1,000 hours. So what happened next? This story isn't about survival. It's about the edge of human endurance and what happens when help almost comes too late. The helicopter skimmed just above the treetops as Lieutenant Aidan Morgan and his co-pilot, Thomas Chin, made another slow sweep over the remote island. Then, out of the dense brush, 3 gaunt figures emerged. Their bodies were sun-scorched and skeletal. Their clothes hung in tatters. Their arms rose not in greeting, but in the cry for help. Every movement spoke the universal language of survival. "No one should be here," Aidan said quietly, eyes locked on the surreal scene below. This place was Kure Atoll, a small, uninhabited coral atoll adrift in the Pacific Ocean. Yet, somehow, against every imaginable odd, 3 human beings stood alive on its shore. Nearby, the broken shell of a small boat lay scattered across the sand, torn apart by the unforgiving sea. Around it, signs of an improvised life told a silent story. A shelter stitched together from palm fronds and rope. A scorched patch of ground where the fire had once flickered. But crucially, there was no food, no fresh water, no clear explanation of how they had endured. In tropical climates, according to the most recent data from the World Health Organization, dehydration can become deadly in as little as 3 days. Yet these castaways had survived for over 4 weeks, 33 days, without any apparent supplies. So what had they eaten? How close had they come to dying before help arrived? Aidan and Thomas exchanged one glance. No words, just understanding. This wasn't a drill. It was a race against time. And high above the vast blue ocean, with the islands slipping beneath their wings, the true scale of human endurance was suddenly undeniable, not just as a number, not as a survival rate, but as 3 hollowed faces staring back at the sky, still alive when they had every reason not to be. But just as survival revealed its rawest form on the island's shore, nature delivered a brutal twist that turned rescue into a high-stakes gamble against time and weather. As Aidan steadied the helicopter above the narrow stretch of beach, the weight of the moment pressed down hard. Below, 3 survivors, barely conscious, trembling, clung to life after enduring what most wouldn't survive a week off. Rescue had finally arrived. But just as hope sparked, a new danger loomed. Without warning, the radar lit up. Thick clouds rolled in, darkening like bruises across the sky, and to the west a towering wall of black storm clouds devoured the horizon. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, tropical storms in the Pacific can escalate in under 6 hours, with wind speeds surpassing 70 miles per hour, and this one was closing in fast. "We've got 30 minutes at best," said Thomas, eyes fixed on the dashboard. Aidan didn't question it. The helicopter had already begun to shudder in the rising turbulence. Visibility was dropping by the second. A winch rescue? Suddenly it was too dangerous to attempt. The risk of flipping the aircraft was terrifyingly real. Aidan made the decision no rescuer ever wants to face. Working fast, they pulled together an emergency survival kit, radio, food, and medical supplies, and dropped it as close to the survivors as the winds would allow. Below, the 3 figures staggered forward, shielding their faces from the blasting sand. Then, crackling through the static on the radio, came a voice. "We've been here 33 days, catching rats, collecting shells, drinking rainwater. Sophia's sugar levels are dangerously low. Please, don't go." Surviving 33 days in relentless tropical heat is a near impossibility on its own. But for someone like Sophia, managing diabetes without medication or proper food, the danger multiplies fast. Based on the latest data from the World Health Organization, severe malnutrition and unmanaged chronic illness in such conditions can lead to life-threatening in less than 2 weeks. Aiden gripped the controls tighter. "We will come back for you," he said, steadying his voice as the first drops of rain struck the windshield. Behind them, the helicopter groaned against the storm's pull. And as they rose away from the island, climbing into the chaos, Aiden carried more than just the chopper. He carried the burden of 3 lives left behind, their fate hanging by a thread, with no promise they'd still be alive when rescue returned. But just as the crew made the heartbreaking call to leave, the storm tightened its grip, and what happened next pushed both man and machine to their breaking point. Aiden stared down at the shoreline as the 3 survivors clung to the supply pack like it was their last thread of life. The wind had turned into a relentless howl, shaking the helicopter's frame as the storm surged in, not approaching anymore, but already consuming everything in its path. His hands hovered over the controls. Every instinct screamed at him to stay, to push through the chaos, to find a way to bring them out. But before he could act, the cockpit jolted violently, tilting hard to one side. "One more minute," Thomas shouted over the roar, "and visibility drops to 0. If we don't leave now, we won't make it back." That was the line. Final. Non-negotiable. Aiden looked down one last time. The survivors were no longer waving. They had dropped to the ground, shielding their bodies as sheets of rain tore across the beach. According to the Pacific Storm Preparedness Report, weather systems of this size can generate wind gusts exceeding 85 miles per hour. At that threshold, helicopter flight becomes nearly impossible, and landing becomes a dangerous sentence. So Aiden turned the aircraft away, not because he wanted to, but because staying meant certain disaster. The flight back to Guam was long, silent. The storm hammered the windshield, but the loudest sound was the one in Aiden's head, that broken voice over the radio. He knew exactly what that meant. According to the World Health Organization, untreated hypoglycemia, when blood sugar drops to critically low levels, can lead to disorientation and unconsciousness in a few hours. Sophia had likely already crossed that line. Aiden's grip locked around the controls, not knowing if they'd still be alive when the sun returned. But as the sun rose over Kure Atoll, what they found on that beach would test not only their training but their understanding of just how far the human spirit can stretch before it breaks. Before we continue, I have a special 10-second request for all of you listening. If you can help me in any way, just press the notification bell and hit that subscribe button. It means the world. It really supports this channel. And if you do that for me, I promise my team and I will do everything we can to make this show even better for you. Deal? Morning came. The storm that had torn through the night was gone now, leaving behind a sky scrubbed clean by wind and salt. At first light, the rescue team lifted off from Andersen Air Force Base with a single objective: to bring the 3 survivors off Kure Atoll alive. As the helicopter approached, the damage spoke for itself. What little shelter the castaways had managed to build was gone, flattened. Palm trees stood like shattered bones, their limbs stripped clean. The beach was littered with debris and jagged branches. 3 figures stood in the sand, frail and shaking. Their bodies were thinner than the day before, skin stretched over bone, soaked clothing clinging to their frames. One man held the other upright. Sophia didn't move at all. Aiden's chest clenched. He had seen combat zones. He had flown over earthquake sites. But this was different. This was the cost of raw, unfiltered willpower. The rescue line dropped. The first man stepped forward, hands trembling, too weak to speak. He gave a single nod as the harness lifted him from the earth. According to the Federal Emergency Management Agency's rescue protocol, Severely malnourished survivors must be airlifted with extreme caution. When the body is dehydrated and the muscles have wasted away, even movement can trigger shock or unconsciousness. The second man followed, barely upright, eyes dazed. Then, Sophia. Aiden leaned forward. Her body was limp. Her skin was pale and waxy. She didn't react as the crew fitted her into the harness. Slowly, they raised her, gently, precise as though she might fracture in the air. The moment she reached the aircraft, medics rushed to her side. Seconds later, the last survivor was lifted from the ground. And just in time. The wind had started to rise again. The storm had given them one final chance, and they'd made it. Inside the aircraft, the three were laid down gently on the floor. None of them spoke, but their silence said more than words ever could. Their eyes, sunken, red-rimmed, hollow with exhaustion, held a truth that no report could capture. And finally, from the edge of that silence, a whisper, "We thought no one was coming." Aiden met his gaze and replied, quiet but firm, "You held on. That's what matters." But survival on the island was only part of the story. What they revealed afterward exposed just how far they'd drifted, and how close they came to vanishing without a trace. The flight back felt endless. Inside the cabin, the medics moved with quiet precision, locked in the tension between survival and loss. When they touched down in Guam, there were no cameras, no questions, just a trauma team waiting on the tarmac. The survivors were rushed directly to the hospital. Then, finally, a nurse stepped out from the intensive care unit. She gave a single nod. Sophia was still alive. Later, one of the men, his voice little more than a whisper, summed up what they had lived through with clarity. "We used all our fuel trying to survive, then we just drifted. We thought it was the end." During their recovery, Aiden visited often, not as a pilot, not in uniform, but as a man trying to understand the cost of what these strangers had endured. Slowly, their story unfolded. They had departed from Puluat, aiming for Pulap, two islands separated by approximately 36. But as their bodies recovered and the truth surfaced, what stayed with Aiden and changed him wasn't just their survival, but how it reshaped everything they once took for granted. Sophia regained her strength. The two men learned to walk again without assistance. And while the deeper wounds, both physical and emotional, would take longer to mend, they were alive. That alone was a victory. Back on duty, Aiden returned to routine. Patrols, briefings, checklists. On the surface, everything was back to normal. But something inside him had shifted. The mission to Kure Atoll lingered in his mind, quietly, constantly. Then one afternoon, long after the noise had faded, a letter arrived. It was from Sophia. In soft, deliberate handwriting, she wrote, "I greet each morning as a gift now, a warm meal, a hug, clean water. None of it will ever feel ordinary again." She spoke of her recovery, of reuniting with her family, and of walking barefoot in her backyard, just to feel the earth beneath her feet. According to the Mental Health and Trauma Recovery Report by the World Health Organization, these responses are common among survivors of extreme events. It's called post-traumatic growth, a shift marked by deepened gratitude, stronger resilience, and a renewed sense of purpose. What happened at Kure Atoll became more than a rescue. Within Coast Guard circles, it's now taught as a case study in high-stakes decision-making. When time is short, the risk is high, and the outcome is anything but guaranteed. But for Aiden, it was never about recognition. It was about what the moment revealed. It was the moment she looked up and smiled, he once told a cadet. That smile meant we made it in time. That smile meant hope had. If you were in Aiden's place, risking everything on that mission, what would have stayed with you the most? Her smile, the silence after, or the weight of the decision? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and follow the channel to discover more interesting things. But just when you think you've heard the limits of human endurance, another story emerges, this time from the heart of the Pacific, where one man's will to survive rewrote the boundaries of isolation and resilience. This is not just another tale of survival. It's the longest known endurance at sea by a lone survivor in modern history. Between the year 2012 and early 2014, José Salvador Alvarenga, a fisherman from El Salvador, drifted across the vast Pacific Ocean for a staggering 438 days. His journey began on November 17, 2012. Alvarenga set off from Costa Azul, a small fishing town along Mexico's southern coastline. It was supposed to be a routine shark fishing trip. By his side was Ezequiel Cordoba, a young and inexperienced deckhand. Together they boarded a 23-foot fiberglass skiff. The boat had no cabin, no mast, and critically, no satellite communication. But within hours, everything changed. A violent storm battered their vessel, destroying their GPS and radio. With the engine lost and no way to signal for help, they were pushed far beyond familiar waters. The two men began to drift, helplessly, into the open ocean. What followed was more than a test of survival. It was a battle of body and mind. Alvarenga fought to stay alive, using every ounce of ingenuity. He caught fish, birds, and turtles with his bare hands or makeshift tools. When rainfall was scarce, he drank turtle blood to stay hydrated. For water, he used pieces of plastic to collect rain, and even filtered it through his clothing when necessary. But the emotional toll was devastating. After nearly 4 months adrift, Cordoba, weakened by starvation and refusing to eat raw food, passed away. Alvarenga, faced with the unbearable, had to release his friend's body into the sea. He spoke to himself, created imaginary conversations, and held tight to the thought of his daughter, the memory that kept him anchored in the fight for life. Then, on January 30th, 2014, after drifting more than 6,700 miles, Alvarenga's boat finally washed ashore on a remote islet in the Marshall Islands. 2 local residents found him, malnourished but miraculously alive. Skeptics questioned his story at first, but oceanographers and survival experts confirmed its feasibility. Ocean current models validated the path his boat had taken across the Pacific, and his physical condition aligned with long-term survival under extreme conditions. Alvarenga later shared his harrowing journey in a book titled 438 Days, co-written with journalist Jonathan Franklin. His story is more than a record-breaking feat. It's a powerful reminder of the human spirit's refusal to give up, even when the entire world seems to have disappeared beyond the horizon. But long before Alvarenga drifted across the Pacific, another survivor, this time a woman left behind on a remote island, endured 18 years of silence, solitude, and survival. Juana Maria, known as the Lone Woman of San Nicolas Island, was the final known member of the Nicoleno tribe. In 1835, during an evacuation organized by Mission Santa Barbara, the remaining Nicoleno were relocated to the mainland after decades of conflict with sea otter hunters, particularly alouette hunters, working for the Russian-American Company. These violent encounters had nearly wiped out the tribe. Some accounts say Juana Maria returned to the island to search for a missing child. Others say she was simply left behind. Whatever the reason, she remained on San Nicolas Island, alone, from the year 1835 until 1853. During those 18 years, she built shelters from whale bones, hunted seals, gathered shellfish, and survived off the island's wild plants. With no contact from the outside world, she adapted entirely to her environment and endured unimaginable solitude. In 1853, Captain George Nidever led a hunting expedition to the island and discovered her living in a whalebone hut. Although no one on the mainland spoke her language, she greeted them with curiosity and joy. She was brought to Santa Barbara, but the Nicoleno language had vanished, and with it, her ability to communicate. But just 7 weeks later, she passed away on October 19, 1853. Before her death, she was baptized as Juana Maria and buried in an unmarked grave at the Santa Barbara Mission Cemetery. Her life later inspired the award-winning novel Island of the Blue Dolphins, published in 1960. Archaeologists have since found tools and shelters on the island that confirm her presence and ingenuity. Her story remains a powerful symbol of survival, resilience, and human endurance in total isolation. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot to us. Click on the video that appears on your screen right now. I'm sure you'll love this content. Comment below about the next topic you'd like to see featured on our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for being with us. Leave a comment, like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button for more exciting videos. See you next time.